exactly in this area. Again, too, you say, well, it's not even above freezing, and you're going to tell me that there is no, that this is because of it's decomposed. And as you said, not like yours, but there has been enough snow around some of these cows that have happened during the wintertime that you would be able to see coyote tracks, whatever types of animals around this carcass. And no, there's nothing there. But this is not by a barn like yours is much more. How do you say? You'd win your case in court with that scenario.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's all debunked. That's the whole problem. All these things are, debunked. But, even Nancy was saying in North Carolina, there's an underground military base that, that she knows about. And, again, too, that strange sightings of UFOs coming or going. Now, in your area, is there any military bases that could account for any of this strangeness around there at all, or not? I don't know your terrain at all.
Yeah, there's a number of military bases. For example, about 20 to 25 miles to the northwest of Santa Fe is going to be Los Alamos, New Mexico. Atomic City. This is where they built the atomic bomb. The code name for that was the Manhattan Project. And that's a top secret place, and they're still doing all kinds of military experiments on up there. And then about 60 miles to the southwest of Santa Fe is going to be Kirtland Air Force Base, and next to that is going to be the Sandia military base. So in other words, underneath the Sandia Mountains there, you have a military bastion, and you also had, at one time, a depot the largest depot for nuclear weapons that was storage there between Sandia and Kirtland. And of course you had all kinds of activity there, just like you had activity over Los Alamos or north of Santa Fe. And as far as Roswell goes, the reason that Roswell was picked, I'd say, for this UFO to scout it in 1947 was, at the time, and this is no longer the case now, at Roswell there was a military Air Force base. It was called Walker Air Force Base. And that was the base, that was the elite of the Army Air Corps. After July 47, Truman ordered the Air Force, the Army Air Corps then became independent and became the Air Force. But at the time, it was the Army Air Corps Base, Walker Air Force Base. And these were the guys that were the best of the best. They dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that base was the only base in the world, not in the USA, in the world that had a nuclear capability, that had nuclear bombs. So it made sense that if you were a higher intelligence, you're going to say, okay, let's see what is the cream of the crop weapon that these humans have. Let's see what these Americans are doing. So that's how come you would have UFO activity over Walker Air Force Base. And I've done enough research on this, and of course these guys are now dead, but you could see their names on the roster, on the manifests, and they did say that there was, before the July 3rd, 4th, there was UFO activity, or Foo Fighter, flying disc, etc., activity in that area. So so Santa Fe is situated in such a way so that we do have, my military bases and the mad scientists, and who knows what they're doing. And you've had other types of projects that have supposedly started out at other bases back east, and they were brought here to Los Alamos or to Sandia, and they continued on with their experimentation.
Oh, wow. Kind of, it makes you want to, I don't want to ever go camping in the woods again, and I certainly don't know if I want to even go, well, I'm not going to say that. It just, if it happens, it happens. I think one of these days, though, they won't be able to cover it up. Something's going to happen, where, something's going to land where it's going to be a lot of witnesses. They can't brainwash them. And if you get in a community where enough people would see it, there's no way to cover it up. I'm going to have a guest on here on the 4th, actually, that when he was a kid, now he lived in the South, that when he was a kid, probably about 9 years old, if I remember right, because I had him on their show, he was talking about his mom worked at the hospital, and the town saw a UFO kind of touch down in like the parking lot of the hospital. And people were coming out looking at it after it left. It just came down and then took right back off. And there was like melted, like, if you take lead or mercury, like mercury, and pour mercury on the ground, how it's a liquid form metal. There was that, but it was a kind of a round circular pattern in the asphalt that was still burning, into the ground. And for no reason at all, but middle of the night, that whole parking lot got re-asphalted. So came in the morning, there was no proof that something landed other than the whole parking lot was in the middle of the night re-asphalted. And his father at the time was actually the dispatcher for the police department in that town. And, he said that he remembers everybody talking about it. But, being that age, he didn't know if, like, the guys in the suits would come out and were talking to the people. But then, I guess, like 40 miles away, there was a sighting the next day of a UFO.
That's interesting. Back in '64, there was a number of sightings here of a UFO touching on down and having some type of engine failure, and landed. Then a couple nights later, it landed at another place. Yeah, that's. And there has been some. That has happened, and again, too, I always think to myself, maybe perhaps different alien species of some sort. But here's one for you here, Gary, about the big cover on up.
Oh, go ahead.
About the Apollo moonshot program. You know that they stopped the moonshot after, what was it, Apollo 17. And the excuse was it's going to cost us too much money, the U.S. government, to keep going to the moon. Yet they had the crews trained, they had all the hardware, the Saturn rockets, everything done, and you say to yourself, why would you stop exploration of the moon?
In fact, didn't they have a stash of the rockets at that point?
Yes, they had numerous ones. In other words, they had it, for all the way to Apollo 21, if they needed to be. I mean, they had the Saturn rockets were all completed. The modules were done. The capsules were done. Everything was done. And the excuse was, well, it's going to cost us too much money. Well, I guess the only amount of money it's going to cost you is maybe to pay the Houston technicians at NASA, but that's a drop in the bucket compared to everything else that's been spent. So I always thought to myself, did somebody, I'm saying some power, not from this world, say, hey, you don't go to the moon anymore. You don't go on up there. That's all there is to it, or else. Because after that, and this is, all we ended up doing was just doing low orbit type of exploration with Skylab, with the Russian Mir, with Space Shuttle. Now, that does not make sense, because once you get the genie out of the bottle, especially with Americans, you're going to be exploring. That's in our character. There's going to be profit on up there, and off we go. And it just does not make sense psychologically or financially for the moon program just to be stopped right there, and for us not to have been on up there since, what was the last time, 1972, I guess it was?
Yeah, well, I find it really strange, right? They're talking about, we want to go to Mars, right? But, I would think if we're going to go to Mars, wouldn't we be going to the moon a few more times to practice and to test our equipment? And, it seems like it's really funny that we, like you said, I mean, there was a big stockpile of the rockets left after the program ended, and they, basically used them up. And I think the last one, they just actually destroyed it or donated it or whatever. And that was only a couple years ago. they had all the equipment made. I mean, the cost was already paid for by us. I mean, they had it, but it's strange that they never went back. And, we had a couple astronauts actually say that they saw strange things. One of them claimed even when he got on and touched down with his boots on the moon, he saw something that it scared him. And that was, I think, God, I can't remember his name. Buzz Armstrong? I can't remember.
Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong?
Yeah. And then you think about, okay, why don't we have more pictures of the backside of the moon? I mean, it's just like, it's kind of strange that, I would think if we wanted to go to Mars so bad right now, which the government wants to do and the space program wants to do, it's like taking an old Etso out and expect it to travel from here to New York and back without it breaking down. I mean, I would think they would want to perfect the equipment and perfect even, living on the moon for a while. I mean, which is going to be a lot closer if something goes wrong than planet Mars.
Exactly. And that's just not in our character. I mean, you look at how the Americans moved westward, and here you have the moonshot, you have all this equipment stockpiled, you have all the people trained, different crews are ready to go, and all of a sudden you pull the plug on it. And the media, again, they're in the pocket of the higher on ups. They're not going to protest about that. They'll just go along with whatever. And the moon. If we had kept on going on the projection that we had been since 1969, since the Eagle landed, we would already have moon bases on up there. We'd have who knows what on up there. But you're absolutely right. We would have perfected our time and space, everything that needed to be done for that when we get to Mars, the chances of a disaster happening are going to be much lesser than what we're doing now. Now we're just getting to the craps table and let's just roll some dice.
Yeah, that's what's scary. So it makes me sometimes, speculate. Maybe there was something on the moon or is on the moon they don't want us to know about. And that is the scary part.
And that's the perfect observation point for planet Earth is La Luna.
Yeah. I can't remember which astronaut, but one astronaut claimed that, when they were going around the moon, that he saw, some things on the backside of the moon, like bases and stuff that were huge.
Right. Yeah, there was, Wally Sherrard and a few others, and I think Collins. There's been some things that have been released from NASA by accident that you say to yourself, geez, that's not, that sure looks odd on the moon's surface. And then some of the things that have been released from the robots that have landed on Mars, says, geez Louise, what did I just see go across the sky there? Was that a alien craft? There is, the moon, that's the big cover on up. That's, for Earth, the JFK, RFK assassination, that's the masterpiece of sleight of hand. For the moon, that's the cosmic Watergate.
Yeah, and and that just makes me wonder why we haven't gone back. I mean, I put it this way, going to Mars, I mean, what's the big reason to go into Mars yet? We haven't explored the moon. We touched down on the moon a couple times, and that was it. I mean, and it's just, that's kind of strange, It's like, okay, let's travel between here and England for the first time, on a ship. I mean, how many times did people travel before, people start, and how many years did it take? So, I mean, there's people claiming that there is life on the moon, alien, and maybe there is, and the government doesn't want to know it. Us to know about it. Maybe, maybe we're working with them, but they basically said, this is ours. You stay away from it. As long as you stay away from it, we'll leave you alone. If you come here again, maybe you won't be there again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very curious.